In my past life, my twin sister Lily saved a mob boss's life. In return, he became obsessed with claiming her. Terrified of his violent world, she pushed me, her twin sister, into her place. My biased parents also forced me to comply. Have you forgotten that your sister donated her bone marrow to save you when you were sick? What's the big deal about stepping in for her now? You owe her this. You can't be so selfish, thinking everyone should revolve around you. You need to give back. It was true Lily had given me her bone marrow, and for years I'd been repaying her, an endless cycle. I was sick and tired of that life. Looking at their cold faces, I nodded. Later, the mob boss went straight for me, establishing a legitimate business empire. I became the glamorous wife of a billionaire. Meanwhile, Lily was scammed out of money and herself by some street punks. In a fit of rage, she plunged a knife into my chest. You stole the life that should have been mine. If you die, I can take your place and have a good life. I didn't struggle, because what she didn't know was that the mob boss had a serious obsession, twisted and insane. As for me, I had been tortured to the point where I no longer wanted to live. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day before the mob boss was supposed to pick up his bride. My poor darling girl, Mom doesn't want you to be taken by someone like that, but he's from the underworld, and he's foreign. He kills people without batting an eye. What are we going to do? Lily, if only you hadn't saved him. It's your good heart that caused all this trouble. Your life is ruined. Hearing Mom and Dad's worried voices, I realized I had been reborn. In my past life, at this very moment, Lily was sobbing dramatically, her eyes intentionally glancing at me. Why is my fate so cruel? Is being kind my fault? I wouldn't ignore even a stray animal on the street, and I donated my bone marrow to my sister without a second thought when she was sick. Why do good deeds go unrewarded? At her reminder, Mom and Dad finally noticed me zoning out on the couch. Their eyes immediately lit up. Dad was the first to suggest, Rose, you and Lily are twins. I sometimes get you confused. Do you think that boss might not be able to tell the difference? After all, he's only met you once? Mom understood his meaning. Are you saying we should let Rose marry him in Lily's place? I immediately refused. No way. I had just gotten into my dream university and had my life all planned out. I didn't want it derailed by one of Lily's schemes. Lily's crying suddenly intensified. Mom, Dad, that's not fair to Rose. Just blame my bad luck. Mom frowned. And that's fair to you? Then, she glared at me fiercely. Have you forgotten that your sister donated her bone marrow to save you when you were sick? What's the big deal about stepping in for her now? You owe her this. Dad chimed in. You can't be so selfish, thinking everyone should revolve around you. You need to give back. I was speechless. Yes, Lily donating her bone marrow to me was a fact, but all these years, I'd been repaying her, and it felt like it would never end. Anything I owned, if Lily wanted it, she would simply take it. This included, but wasn't limited to, a limited edition doll, a dress, and even a boy I had a crush on when I was first discovering love. Whenever I expressed dissatisfaction, she would use the bone marrow incident against me. My parents would side with her, constantly accusing me of being insensible, only knowing how to take and never give back. For years, I'd been suffocated by their expectations. Finally, even my entire life was being thrown away. I knew Mom and Dad's favoritism stemmed from Lily's lively and outgoing personality, while I was quiet, withdrawn, and didn't know how to please anyone. So, to end it all, I eventually agreed to sacrifice myself. The ironic part was, I ended up dying by Lily's hand, but in this life, I wouldn't obediently comply again. I was about to speak, but unexpectedly, Lily suddenly declared loudly, "It's fine. I'm willing to marry him. I believe he'll go straight for me and live a normal life." Meeting her determined gaze, I realized she had also been reborn, though I didn't know how she died. Perfect. It saved me the trouble. I curved my lips into a slight smile. Well, congratulations, Lily. No more suffering through school. You'll marry the boss early and reach the pinnacle of life in one step. Lily rolled her eyes at me. Cut the passive-aggressive act. So what if you're good at studying and got into a good university? After graduation, you'll probably make $3,000 a month, while I'll be married to the boss with more money than I can spend. It's normal for you to be jealous. Me? Jealous? Oh, I was so jealous. I hoped she could still smile after she learned about Lucian's obsessions. Mom and Dad were bewildered by her sudden change in attitude. Sweetheart, didn't you say you didn't want to marry him? You cried for days, your eyes were swollen. Why the sudden change of heart? Lily quickly put on a show of being understanding. Mom, Dad, I'm not like Rose, who's so good at her studies. If I really let her go in my place, her whole life would be ruined. I can't be that selfish. Even if my life is over, at least Rose can take care of you in your old age. Mom and Dad were completely swept away by her sacrifice, the three of them hugging and crying endlessly, making isolated me feel like an outsider. Though I was used to it, this scene still stung my heart. Even if Lily herself was willing to marry him this time, Mom and Dad still couldn't help but feel resentment towards me. Even though I hadn't said a word this lifetime, they still blamed me for not actively shielding Lily from this fate. Instead, Lily's sacrifice for the greater good filled them with guilt. In my past life, on the day the boss came to pick up his bride, Lily, terrified of being recognized, hid in her room and didn't show her face. Mom and Dad also lied, claiming they only had one daughter. This time, Lily began to groom herself before dawn, eagerly anticipating a life where the mob boss would cherish her above all else. Unaware of her true feelings, Mom and Dad hadn't slept a wink, worried about her leaving. In the morning, Lily came to my room and warned me fiercely. I've already told Mom and Dad to keep quiet, saying we only have one daughter. Don't get any stupid ideas. Don't you dare come downstairs and be an eyesore later. I was more than happy to comply. After everything in my past life, I never wanted to see that man again. I know, I won't go out. But Lily still wasn't reassured. She stubbornly tied me to a chair. Soon there was a stir downstairs. He had arrived. My dad ran a small business, and while we weren't poor, we certainly weren't wealthy. This townhouse was his big splurge, and to save money on renovations, the soundproofing was, well, let's just say, barely there. I could hear the conversation downstairs clearly. I thought that after being reborn, I wouldn't tremble at the sound of his voice again, but when he spoke, I still held my breath. "Miss Henderson, it seems you're ready." His voice was deep, laced with an authority that sent shivers down my spine. It wasn't directed at me, but at Lily, yet it echoed the nightmares of my past life, and I couldn't help but tremble slightly. "Yes, let's go." Lily's voice was jubilant, probably captivated by his appearance. In my past life, it was after she saw Lucian that her hatred and jealousy towards me reached its peak, making her determined to kill me. Lucian, though born and raised abroad, with mixed heritage, was a perfect blend of Eastern and Western features. He was tall and lean, with fair skin, and sharp, deep-set features, the dream of countless young women. women. Just like in my past life, Lucian left mom and dad a hefty sum of money for their retirement, enough to astound my small-town dad, who was easily impressed. I prayed for them to leave quickly, to banish the nightmare of my past life far away from me. Suddenly, Lucian asked, "Is she your only daughter?" I froze. Had he asked that question in my past life? Searching my memories, I found no answer. I wasn't sure. Lucian couldn't possibly have been reborn too, could he? A man so careful with his life, so powerful and wealthy, I couldn't imagine anyone being able to kill him. Mom, Dad, and Lily all said in unison, "Of course, we only have one daughter, and she's the one who saved you." Is that so? Then let's go. Lucian's tone was unreadable. Hearing them leave, I let out a long breath. Soon after, Mom came to untie me. She excitedly told me, "He gave us a check for $100 million, and it's US dollars. Can you imagine how much that is in local currency? Your dad and I can relax for the rest of our lives." Yet she had been crying and reluctant to let go of her precious daughter just before Lucian walked in. In my past life, they could have also retired comfortably with this money they got from selling me. But Lily, uneducated and irresponsible, got carried away with the money. She spent her days in nightclubs, drinking and partying, and fell in with a group of punks who claimed to be trust fund kids. Whether they were actually rich, I don't know. But in the end, she was scammed out of money and herself, dragging mom and dad back to square one overnight. I forced a smile. "Congratulations," Mom paused, then changed her tone. "Congratulations for what? Congratulations that your sister was snatched away by a gangster and will never come back? This money is the payment for your sister's life. Do you even have a heart? Do I have a heart?" I wasn't the one smiling happily while holding the money. I couldn't be bothered to argue with her. Anyway, once I started university, I planned to live on campus. I'd walk my own path from then on, wanting no more ties to them. 4 years flew by. My university life was unexpectedly smooth and peaceful. I thought I had completely escaped the shadows of my past life. But then, news came that Lily was returning. Lucian had indeed gone straight for her, moving his businesses domestically. But I knew the suffering she had endured behind the scenes. On the day she came home, she made a grand entrance, escorted by luxury cars, covered in designer brands. I knew her. No matter how miserable she was behind closed doors, she always had to appear superior in public. So Mom and Dad didn't notice anything amiss. They even called to warn me, "Your sister's back. Don't come home for a while. We told our son-in-law we only have one daughter. We can't let him find out." I laughed. "Mom, I haven't been home in 2 years. The last time was when Mom accidentally broke her leg and called me back to care for her." My words silenced Mom for a moment. Then she grumbled, "You're truly useless. In the future, your dad and I will have to rely on your sister and our good son-in-law." She hung up after that. I shook my head helplessly. I hoped so too. That evening, I had just gotten back to my rental apartment from work when Mom called again. "Come home. Your sister wants to see you." It was a command, and she hung up before I could refuse. I didn't want to listen to her, but considering Lily had also been reborn, if she wanted to see me, she would definitely find me. It was better to humor her and see what drama she was planning.
Rose stared at the dark screen of her phone for a long moment before slipping it into her bag. "A few tricks up my sleeve," she murmured. Unlike her previous life, she hadn't spent 4 years simply studying. She had interned at one of the country's largest law firms, specialized in corporate compliance, and quietly built connections with prosecutors, financial investigators, and journalists. She also carried something even more valuable: evidence. Before leaving, she emailed several encrypted files to her lawyer with a scheduled release. If anything happened to her tonight, the files would automatically be sent to the police and media. Only then did she drive toward her parents' house. The neighborhood looked festive. Luxury cars stretched down the entire street. Neighbors crowded outside, whispering enviously. Lily really married into wealth. "Look at those bodyguards. Her husband must adore her." Rose smiled faintly. They only saw the golden cage, not the chains inside it. She stepped inside. The living room had been completely renovated with expensive furniture. Her parents practically glowed with pride. "There you are." Mom frowned immediately. "Why are you dressed so plainly? Your sister is covered in luxury brands." Rose looked at her simple blazer. It was appropriate for work. Dad snorted. "That's the difference between someone making a salary and someone born to be rich." Rose ignored him. Her eyes landed on Lily. For a second, neither sister spoke. Lily was beautiful. More beautiful than before. Designer dress. Diamond necklace. Perfect makeup. But the illusion ended there. Rose noticed the thick concealer around Lily's wrist. A faint bruise peeked out beneath her bracelet. "The day you tied me to a chair? The day you sold my future? Or the day you stabbed me to death?" Lily froze. "So," Rose smiled. "You remember that part too." Lily's breathing became ragged. "I only killed you because you wanted my life." Rose finished the sentence for her. "You didn't kill me because you suffered. You killed me because despite all your scheming, I still had something you wanted." Lily's face became frighteningly pale. Then she suddenly laughed. A hysterical laugh. "You think you've won? You think I'm suffering? He loves me." Rose looked at her bruises. "Does he?" Lily instinctively covered her wrist. "You know nothing." At that moment, a calm male voice came from behind them. "She's right." Both sisters froze. The study door slowly opened. Lucian walked out. He had been there the entire time. His black suit was immaculate. His expression unreadable. Lily's blood drained from her face. "How long?" "Long enough." His icy eyes settled on Rose. Miss Henderson, you've become even more impressive. Rose's heartbeat accelerated. So, he had suspected. Lucian looked between the twins. I always wondered. The woman who saved me. He slowly approached. Never smiled like this one. Lily dropped to her knees. Honey, listen to me. Be quiet. His tone wasn't loud, yet it instantly silenced the room. He crouched before Rose instead. You knew. I did. You knew she lied. Yes. You never came looking for me.
No.
His lips curled ever so slightly. And why is that? Rose met his gaze without fear. Because I'd rather be poor and free than rich and owned. For the first time, Lucian actually laughed. A genuine laugh. It sent chills through Lily. So,
He stood.
I finally have my answer. He turned toward Lily. You told me there was only one daughter. Lily collapsed completely. I was scared. They made me. It wasn't my fault. Mom and Dad rushed into the room after hearing the shouting. The moment they saw Lucian's expression, their legs nearly gave out. Dear son, Lucian looked at them with cold indifference. You accepted $100 million. You lied. You committed fraud. You concealed the identity of the person who saved my life. Dad stammered. We didn't mean. Lucian interrupted. I don't care what you meant. He snapped his fingers. Several lawyers walked in behind him, along with police officers. Rose blinked. Police? Lucian glanced toward her. As it happens, I dislike betrayal. One lawyer calmly announced, Mr. Henderson, the funds transferred 4 years ago were placed under contractual conditions. The agreement clearly states that fraudulent misrepresentation voids the gift. In addition, evidence of tax evasion and financial fraud involving your company has been submitted. Dad nearly fainted. What? Mom screamed. No. The police stepped forward. Mr. Henderson, you'll need to come with us. The room erupted into chaos. Dad struggled. Mom cried. Lily desperately grabbed Lucian's sleeve. Please. I love you. I've been your wife for 4 years. Lucian looked down at her hand as though it were dirt. My wife. He gently removed her fingers. My wife died before she ever entered my house. Lily's eyes widened in horror. No. You knew. I suspected. He looked toward Rose. I merely needed confirmation. Lily let out a broken scream. Everything she had sacrificed for, had been built on a lie that Lucian had never fully believed. And now, it was all collapsing at once. Rose watched silently as police officers separated her parents from Lily. The living room that had once echoed with praise for Lily had descended into complete panic. No. Mom clung desperately to an officer's sleeve. There has to be a mistake. My husband is an honest man. The officer calmly removed her hand. You can explain everything during the investigation. Dad's face was gray. This is because of you. He pointed at Rose with trembling fingers. If you had just kept your mouth shut. Rose laughed. A quiet laugh. Then another. Soon she couldn't stop. Everyone stared at her. Even Lucian raised an eyebrow. She looked around the room. The imported crystal chandelier, the designer furniture, the expensive paintings. Everything had been bought with the money they received after selling her life. What's so funny? Lily hissed. Rose slowly wiped a tear from her eye. I've imagined this moment for years. She walked over to the dining table and casually picked up a grape from an expensive fruit platter. She popped it into her mouth.
Crunch.
So this is what justice tastes like. Mom glared at her. How can you smile? Rose looked genuinely puzzled. You smiled when you accepted $100 million in exchange for my future. You smiled while tying me to a man you believed was a killer. You smiled every time Lily took something from me. So, why shouldn't I smile now? Mom opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Rose continued. Do you remember my 7th birthday? Dad frowned. What nonsense are you talking about? You bought us both dolls. Lily liked mine better. So, you took mine and gave it to her. You told me, you're the older sister. Be understanding. She looked at Lily. Then came my scholarship. You cried because no one congratulated you. So Mom and Dad forced me to reject an overseas exchange program so you wouldn't feel bad. She looked back at her parents. My first bicycle. My piano lessons. My college savings. My bedroom. My birthday cakes. My first love. My future. You took everything. Every sentence made the room quieter. I kept wondering, Rose said softly. How much more did I have left to give? Her smile widened. Apparently, my entire life. Silence. Then she clapped.
Once. Twice. 3 times.
What a magnificent family. Lily suddenly exploded. You still had it better than me. Rose blinked. Really? You think being trapped with him was easy? Lily yanked up the sleeve of her designer dress. Dark bruises ringed her arm. Look, he watches me every second. I can't leave without permission. I can't have friends. I can't even choose what to wear. She laughed hysterically. I haven't slept through one night in 4 years. Rose simply nodded. I know. Lily froze. I lived it. Those 3 words sucked all the air from the room. Rose's expression remained calm. I know exactly what every bruise feels like. I know what it's like to have every movement monitored. I know what it's like to smile in public while dying inside. She tilted her head. And despite knowing that, you still push me toward that fate in my previous life. Lily's lips trembled. You weren't trying to survive. Rose interrupted. You were trying to sacrifice someone else. There was a difference. A huge one. Lily burst into tears. I was scared. So was I. I didn't know. Neither did I. I just wanted to live. So did I. Each answer landed like another hammer blow. Finally, Lily collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. Rose looked down at her. For years, she had imagined taking revenge. She had imagined screaming, hitting her, making her suffer. But now, watching Lily curled up on the marble floor, watching her parents being led away in handcuffs, watching the luxurious home become a crime scene, Rose felt nothing. No hatred. No satisfaction. Only relief. She walked to the front door. Rose. Mom cried. Please. We're still your parents. Rose stopped without turning around.
No.
My parents died the day they decided one daughter was worth selling. She opened the door. Bright evening sunlight poured inside. Behind her came Lily's broken sobs, her father's desperate shouting, her mother's pleading, the clicking of handcuffs, and the calm voices of lawyers. Inventorying assets. It sounded almost musical. Rose closed her eyes and smiled. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, none of it was her problem anymore. Rose wasn't over with them. In her previous life, mercy had earned her a knife in the heart. This time, she intended to make sure none of them could ever crawl back into her life. The next morning, she arrived at the law firm where she worked. Her mentor looked up from a mountain of case files. I heard about the Henderson investigation. Rose nodded. I'd like to volunteer. For the prosecution? For the victims. Within hours, she began contacting every former employee of her father's company. The accountant who had been pressured into falsifying records. The warehouse manager who had been fired after refusing to destroy invoices. The supplier who had never been paid. One by one, people who had stayed silent for years finally spoke. Not because Rose asked them to lie. Because someone was finally willing to listen. Boxes of documents arrived. Emails. Bank transfers. Secret ledgers. The fraud investigation that had started as a single charge quickly expanded into dozens. Meanwhile, Lily remained under house arrest while investigators examined Lucian's businesses and marriage records. She called Rose constantly. Hundreds of times. Rose never answered. Instead, every voicemail was saved. Several contained Lily admitting she had knowingly impersonated the woman who had saved Lucian. Those recordings became evidence. Their mother tried another approach. She appeared outside Rose's office, crying dramatically. You have to save your father. You've always been the smart one. Rose calmly asked reception to call security. As her mother was escorted outside, she said only one sentence. You finally remembered I'm your daughter. Months later, the trial began. The courtroom was packed. Journalists filled every seat. Evidence that Rose had helped organize painted a devastating picture. Years of tax fraud, money laundering,
Forgery.
witness intimidation, the fraudulent acceptance of Lucian's enormous payment. Every new witness seemed to make the case worse. Even the judge remarked that the scheme had been far more extensive than investigators initially believed. Lily tried bargaining. I was manipulated by my parents. Then prosecutors played recordings in which she bragged that she had stolen Rose's future twice. The courtroom fell silent. Even her own attorney closed his eyes. When sentencing day arrived, none of them looked like the confident family that had once looked down on Rose. Her father looked 20 years older. Her mother cried, without stopping. Lily stared blankly ahead. The judge handed down substantial prison sentences for the financial crimes they had been convicted of, along with orders for restitution and the forfeiture of many of their assets. Everything purchased with illicit funds was seized. The mansion, the luxury cars, the jewelry, the investment accounts, even the furniture. Outside the courthouse, reporters rushed toward Rose. "Miss Henderson, do you forgive your family?" She smiled politely. "Forgiveness is personal, but accountability belongs to the courts. Today, accountability won." She walked away before another question could be asked. That evening, Rose received a message from her former mentor. "You could have chosen any career. Why corporate law?" Rose looked out over the city lights before replying. "Because I know exactly what happens when powerful people think they'll never face consequences." She put her phone away. For the first time in either life, she didn't have to spend her energy surviving. She could finally